Hey Tutor, how's your week? School going alright?
Someone a little grumpy pants?
Can we just enjoy the silence a little bit?
I mean, that'd make for a really boring episode, but...
Welcome to Cue It or Screw It, now with 100% less silence.
That's a great thing.
So this week we watched Prince Avalanche.
Starring none other than Emile Hirsch and Paul Rudd.
Yes.
Really only starring those people.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's one random guy who comes in on a truck every once in a while, and an old lady who I still can't tell whether or not she exists.
So, 4 characters, pretty simple,
Yes.
pretty toned down. So this movie is about Paul Rudd, who is involved with Emile Hirsch's sister. So he does a favor to Emile Hirsch's sister and gives Emile Hirsch a job. And so they're working together, doing road construction essentially.
Basically putting like lane lines and reflectors and stuff and guard posts out.
On a new stretch of highway.
Mhm.
It's set in the 1980s. So it's just these two guys bro chilling and doing work, and the animosity between them because Paul Rudd's relationship isn't as great as Paul Rudd thought it was in the beginning of the movie. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's basically the two of them like finding out who they are. One, basically self-discovery. It's kind of just a whole story about self-discovery between the two of them, because you have these two opposite people. You've got this one who just wants to go into town whenever he can and just have fun and be young, even though he's growing up and needs to get on that level of responsibility. And then you've got Paul Rudd's character, Alvin, who's kind of always been the responsible one and doesn't know really how to have fun. And so he's kind of learning that, he needs to learn how to cut loose so he can be happier, not just for himself, but for the people around him.
Yep. Most of this movie doesn't have conflict. It's pretty...
It's pretty static,
It's
yeah.
pretty static until about 2/3 of the way in.
Mhm.
And then there's some relationship tension that happens between Paul Rudd and his girlfriend or wife, or we're not really clear on that. So it's a pretty simple, pretty static was a great word.
Yeah.
Pretty plain movie.
There's a lot of
And then-
kind of building tension, like they're trying to figure each other out, and they're both kind of making assumptions based off of like the time that they share together, just the stories they tell. Paul Rudd looks at Emile Hirsch's character Lance as just this immature kid who doesn't want to grow up and doesn't want to take any responsibility for his life, and Lance sees Alvin as this really stuck-up, button-up guy who wants to just devote his life to work and not to the people around him.
So the movie doesn't have a strong story. It has to have really strong characters. And I didn't see that in Prince Avalanche, personally. I thought the characters were pretty straightforward in a way that wasn't compelling, wasn't interesting. I knew what they were going to do, and I didn't really care if they did it or not. I really didn't care about the characters.
No.
What did you think?
I thought they were believable, but that didn't make them necessarily compelling. I still liked the movie overall, and I liked the characters because I think everyone knows someone like that, but that being said, it wasn't necessarily a very compelling story. Like, it wasn't boring to me, but it wasn't anything that just stood out as like a huge coming-of-age tale that we haven't already heard before.
Sure. I thought it was borderline boring. If it wasn't boring, it was really, really close. It's a really slow movie. And there was really only one point where I was like, wow, this is really, really interesting. That's when Emile Hirsch and Paul Rudd, they just get plastered.
Yeah, they get into a fight.
And they get in a fight, and they're just throwing stuff in the ravine with this really ridiculous music playing, and it's just a really outrageous scene. And that was really the only time where I was really, really, that I was compelled and excited and really wanted to watch the movie.
I think the movie is its most interesting and most compelling when there's no dialogue.
Really?
And there's just the music going, and there are all these different shots. I feel like that progresses the story more than anything. There's really good B-roll, a lot of really interesting artistic shots. Like even the very beginning when they're revealing the title of the movie and they put a little bit on with each hammer hit, I kind of like that touch. I mean, it was simple, it was just interesting enough. It wasn't too flashy, but I thought it was kind of cool.
But other than that, the movie tried so hard to be symbolic and thoughtful, and I didn't think it had the substance to really fill itself out. It had a good.
I can agree with that.
It had good bones. It had good structure, but it didn't have the substance. It didn't have the heart that was necessary to really help it blossom.
Yeah, I didn't think it was great, but I definitely thought it was good enough. I thought it was a good showcase for Paul Rudd to show that he can at least be a dramatic actor. Like, this wasn't great, and it wasn't like this insanely deep thing, but it did show that Paul Rudd in a situation could be a dramatic actor and good at it, so.
Sure,
I
yeah.
thought he could hold his own, and
Yeah.
obviously the same could be said for Emile Hirsch, who's shown that in multiple roles.
Yep.
Very similar to Into the Wild.
Yep.
Where he kind of did the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, the acting is an A plus, but it's a high B. It's
Yeah.
high B plus, borderline A minus.
It feels very real to me, though.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Those are real people and
Sure.
the real way people would talk about things and react to things. So it felt real, but it still didn't just blow my mind, the acting.
So what did you think when it all comes down to it? What do you think? Would you cue it or screw it?
I would cue it, but not with high expectations. I wouldn't put this way towards the top of my list. So I would say cue this, but don't go into it with huge expectations. Don't be like, I need to see this movie. If you see it, great. If you don't cue it, you're not missing out a whole lot. But if you like the actors and you want to see them in a dramatic role and have a little bit of fun and just a bit of an artsy film, this would be good.
Yeah, and I guess I would say probably screw it.
Okay.
But when you're saying you're on the borderline between Q and screw, and I'm on the borderline between Q and screw, and I'm more on the
just
screw
on
side.
the
Yeah.
Q
Yeah,
side, you're
and I'm
just on the
the
screw.
screw side. So I did have high expectations. I had heard good things about it. I was actually pretty excited to watch it, and then I just, like I said, it just didn't have the substance that I really I wanted, that I was expecting. It had good bones. It had good structure. The characters were kind of interesting, but I didn't think they were interesting enough to carry the story because there wasn't conflict.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the characters were strong enough to overcome that lack of conflict.
I would agree with
the
that.
strength of the characters. So when it comes down to it, I would say probably leave it off your list. Kye, I would say probably leave it on your list.
I would say leave it on there, and if you're just kind of curious, give it a watch, but definitely don't put it high priority.
All right, so this has been another episode of Cue It or Screw It. You're gonna have to make your own call on this, on Prince Avalanche.
Yeah,
If
we're
you-
pretty divided, so
If you cue it, it's an all right choice. If you screw it, it's an all right choice.
you're not missing out.
You're
too
not
much.
missing out too much either way. So I'm Andrew Teeter.
I'm Kye Hogan. You can check us out on Twitter. You can give us your review of it, say what you thought about it. You can also check out some of our main points for either queuing or screwing it on our blog spot. So you want to check that out. So we want to leave you with a question. If there was a woman in your truck,
There is.
would you be good to her? Would you treat her right? Think about that and keep on queuing.